Hello and welcome to 3D modeling for 3D printing. In this video, I'm going to show you how to model a bolt pistol or bolter, or a small bolter or a snub pistol. I think they're all the same names, but I don't know enough about Warhammer 40K to make a judgment call on that. But it's going to be a very simple tutorial about how to actually make something in Blender that you can then 3D print. So we'll just get started off right away. First thing is some of the settings that I use may be different from what other people use. This is Blender 2.8. However, I'm using a slightly larger resolution scale for the add-ons. Make sure you have Loop Tools and Bool Tool selected. Save those preferences. And under key map, I use the Blender 2.7x key mapping rather than the newer Blender key mapping. I just don't like the new ones that much. But other than that, it's basically default Blender settings. So let's just get started here. Now, first thing you want to do is add a reference image. For this, I just went to Google Images and searched for whatever I wanted to model. There's a few different ways to insert reference images. There's like this reference thing, which is a little strange, but I kind of prefer the background reference a little bit easier. For this, I'm going to use this image right here as my reference. Now, the first thing I want to do is scale it. Now, a few things about navigation in Blender, if you're not very familiar. Middle mouse button, if you hold it down, it rotates. Shift middle will actually pan. And 1, 9, and these little keyboards commands on your keys, like the numpad, will actually change your view quickly. And you'll bounce between them all a lot. Now let's scale the object. Now, scaling is very, very important in Blender. And when I do scaling, I make sure that under the settings over here, the unit settings, under scene, if you go to units, open it up, the unit system I use is none. It's going to default to metric, but I just use none. You can use metric, but you have to keep track of your units a little bit. But for me, it's just none. And that means that any object in here, its size is going to be in millimeters when you actually go to export it for printing. So that's very, very important. If you're new to 3D printing, 3D modeling, everything is metric in the 3D modeling world and 3D printing world. Now, to scale it, I'm going to add a mesh, add a cube, and this cube is going to be essentially the bounds of my object. So I'm going to scale it up. So it's like roughly right here, just to give me an idea of what the sizing is going to be. And you can scale it however you want, front to back, but for me, I'm going to scale it to the grip. So scale, hit S, shift it, R to rotate a little bit, scale it down, R to rotate, G to move, S to scale, R to rotate. I'll stop doing this pretty soon. That gets me about where I want it to be. And this lets me give me my dimensions right here. Now, I'm going to apply that scale 1 to 1. Now, I want to make sure that this is the size that I want it to be. And for me, I've actually done some pre-measuring a little bit. I've kind of found, just with using a ruler, that about 120 millimeters for me would be a good size for the grip. So I'm going to scale this up. Keep going till it's about 120. That's about right for me. There we go. Yeah, that's right. Let me adjust. I want my Y here to be about 120. That's a good size for me right there. Now I make sure my background image is scaled up accordingly. So let's just drag it up like so. I believe I can actually get it right about there. Let's keep scaling. This functionality is pretty cool right now, but it's still a little clunky. Let's see. How about there? That looks good. Now I want to go over here and click this button right here. This makes it so I can no longer select that background. It's just going to be permanently in my picture for now, which is just fine by me. So move it back a little right there. Actually, it's fine like that. All right, now that I've done that, I can delete that object. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to block out the basic shapes of this bolt pistol. Go to Add, Mesh, Cube, since most of this is a cube. The cube is going to be this tiny little thing down here, so let's scale it up. Move it up here. Scale, G to move. And I kind of like chose this thing for a reason, is that it lets me interpret the look of it a lot, rather than be too restricted by what other people have done before. So if you're not too familiar with this, what I'm doing, this is in object mode. I'm going to hit 7 to go to top view. Then hit tab to go into edit mode, then Z to go to the X-ray mode. I'm going to select that top plane right there. Hit G to move it down, just like that. Another option would be to add a mesh as a plane. Move that up here. This is probably a slightly better way to do it. That way I can actually move it accordingly. I'm just hitting G and then Z axis or Y axis or accordingly. If you hit G, X, it moves across the G axis, G, Y, Y axis, and so forth. Now I'm not going to do this little curve right here. We'll worry about that later, but I'll go to basically the edge of it, hit Extrude, which is E, move it along this axis here. Now I'm going to keep this little detail in mind right here when we extrude the next piece, like so. Extrude again to right here, pop down here, and let's add a little liner. This has a little bit of overlap right here. I want to actually build that into my model, so I'll go over here to loop cut. I'm going to cut a loop right there. Then go back over here to select box, select the bottom edges. Right there's the edge select. Hit extrude, plop it down to there. I want to take that into account a little bit. Oh, let me change one thing. Hit Control Z to go back. I'm going to select all of this and extrude. Then extrude again, extrude again. That gets me all these little edges, just like that. Now we're going to make this in multiple parts, so it doesn't matter. We don't have to worry about the rest of this piece here. I just want this part here kind of blocked out the basic shapes of first. Now let's add a new mesh. Move it up here. We're going to build the underside of this now. There. All right, let's create a loop cut here. You know, I'll do this a different way. Delete that. I'm going to make this whole entire thing as just one big, huge piece. I think that might make more sense. Yep, let's do it. Let's do it two separate pieces. Sorry, I'm being confusing. Add a plane, scale it up. And again, we're just going to rough out the basic shapes. Oops, sorry, I'm still in loop cut mode. I'm just going to rough out the basic shapes. I don't care about the overlap because the way we're going to do this. E to extrude. Right there. Move this up here. I'm going to extrude over here. And it's kind of a low quality image. I don't know if this is a curve or like a drop off. So we'll assume it just like angles down. So we're going to extrude. Now we're going to go to Vertex select. Select that top vertices. Hit G. Move it down to get that right there. That looks about right. Those are our basic shapes. Now let's add this right here. Add a plane. Move it over here. Scale it up. Oops. Make sure your scales are always positive. Negative can kind of be a little messy. And these are just basic shapes. We may not even like use this as the final. It's just something to kind of like build our picture out, build this thing out with here a little. Especially this part, we're actually going to do something a little different with it. So that's just temporary. Now let's do a grip. One thing with the grip here, you'll note that the way this is set up, this would be very, very hard for your hand to comfortably fit on. You have to keep in mind, like look at your left hand or your non-dominant hand, and like you're holding a gun, and right here should be where the palm of your palm should be, and right here should be where your trigger finger should basically be at, and you should measure that distance. And if I pull out a ruler and I measure that distance on me, it's about 70 millimeters. So you want to make sure this distance is about 70 millimeters. And we can actually use this object as a guide for that. Or you can actually use this measure tool, which is kind of cool. But for me, let's just use this object. Move it up here, scale it to 70. So that should be about where the trigger is. Like this is where your trigger should be resting. Keep that in mind a little bit. Let's duplicate it and make the grip. Here I'm just manipulating the individual vertices. Don't worry too much about the detail. We're just going to grab the basics of this shape, and then we will return later to detail this a little bit. There we go. We'll leave this part here for now. Then grab these, and we'll go up here. This right here. You know, this is like this little like groove here. To kind of get that well, we'll do a loop cut. Cut down the middle. Go back up to select. Extrude up this. Then we will do here. Extrude over to here. There's our basic grip size. We'll worry about adding this hole in later. All right, now we have this very, very flat thing here. It's not very interesting. So we'll add a little more visual interest. We'll add our first 3D object. We're going to add a cylinder. Do about 16 vertices. This is going to be our barrel. I'll scale it up. I'm going to rotate it along the y-axis. So it's right about there. And our dimensions are pretty big, because I believe this gun is supposed to be 75 caliber, so it'd be, I guess, about 28 millimeter bullets, which would be about here. But since nothing really in the Warhammer 40k universe makes any sense, we'll make the barrel just gigantic. Why not? And we'll scale this to be a little bit bigger than our sizes here. There's also these two things here. I don't know what they are. I'm not very Warhammer proficient, but I think those can be kind of wherever we want. I've seen some other people model stuff where they just add it's like a duplicate cylinder up here, then another cylinder down there. That can work for now. We'll just have it be like that for now. All right, now everything's kind of flat, so we're going to thicken it a little bit. By doing that, we're going to take our object, and we're going to go into edit mode, and we're going to select the whole entire thing and move it up a little bit. Go to modifiers, select modifier, mirror that object along the z-axis here, and then we're going to hit clipping, then hit E to extrude down like that, then delete like that. So that delete's very important. We want to delete these vertices on the inside, or those faces on the inside. That can actually cause problems in our 3D printing. Delete it. If you want to make it bigger, you can always just scale it accordingly, like that, or you can just select the top pieces, like so, and move those up and down. Both are fine. All right, now for the next layer, let's do the, where is it? Oh, sorry. This layer right here. This kind of detail layer. Do the same thing. Select it. Move it up like this. Like so. And extrude it down. Sorry. Let's back up a second. So really quick, the reason why there's two different ways you can move this set of lines right here. If I hit G and move it in object mode, that's totally fine. But because I want to add a modifier, the modifier is at a more local level rather than a global level. The modifier will apply to the Z-axis this way rather than in edit mode, which will be right here. So functionally what that looks like is if I move it up here, I hit modifier, mirror, Z-axis, it doesn't do anything. But if I go to edit mode, select everything, double clicking A, do GZ to move up, hit modify mirror on the Z axis, then it actually appears. And I can move it like so. And we'll get a little more detail with this, but just hit extrude, make sure clipping's engaged till it hits the middle, delete those right there. We have our basic shape kind of coming to life. I think it's a little smaller here. Let's go about right there with it. These Warhammer things, they're very blocky and they're very, very simple, so they're very easy to model. All right, let's make this. Let's add a little bit to this grip. Modify, mirror, Z-axis, same thing. Extrude, clipping, delete. Same thing with the grip. Go into edit mode, move up, mirror, Z-axis, clipping, extrude. Check it out, bolter. Super simple, super easy. This wasn't that hard to do at all. First of all, I have no idea right now why it's doing this weird line effect here. This is kind of strange, but maybe it's a glitch in the current render settings. All right, let's, that's actually a basic bolter. From there, you can kind of do whatever you want for detailing. So let's start diving in here and adding a few details. Let's do a few tweaks to the grip here. So I already know in advance that I'm going to print this out in multiple pieces. I'm going to print the barrel pieces separate. I'm going to print the body piece as one piece. And the clip is going to be printed out as one piece as well. The grip also going to be its own piece. I'm also pretty sure I'm going to print the grip base here as a separate piece from this, but we'll worry about that in a second. So I'm going to want these grip pieces to fit in here. You'll notice this has a little bit of a curve. We're going to straighten that out a little bit. So we're going to go into the settings for, we're going to edit the actual object for the grip. Go up to edge select. We're going to select by drag and dropping those edges. Now to flatten this out, I hit scale, then X, like so. Then I'm going to change that scale to 0, and it's going to line up nice and flat. Do the same thing for up here. Scale it. Like so. I want the Y to go to 0. So that should fit in there nice and evenly. Now let's cut out this little middle piece right here. There's a couple ways to do that. I can either edit the object directly, which is probably the easy mode, or I can actually create another object that I'll use to cut with. And so we'll do that. We're going to create a cylinder. Move it up here, scale it to where I think the grip should be, let's say right about there. Pop over here. Select these faces on this side. Like that. Selecting those faces. Gonna extrude over here. Like so. Now that I have this object selected, I'm going to select this object here. Hit Control minus. That's that bool tool function. We're going to cut that little piece out right there. And there is our barrel. And that should fit our hand pretty comfortably. If our fingers are kind of going along right here, that should be decently comfortable for fitting our hand. That's about where my hand would end up being. Another reason why I'm making the grip print separately is I can print this out, and if it's not comfortable, I can very quickly just make a modification to this and not have to reprint the entire gun. I just got to reprint that grip. But this should actually be really comfy, really easy to use. All right, we'll get rid of that. We don't really need it anymore. Let's make a trigger. I'll add a cube, move it here, scale it up like so. All right, we're going to edit mode, and you can kind of make this grip however you want. But the way I'll do it, I'll show you a way, is do a couple loop cuts. Click there. Then go to, let's go to 4 loop cuts, and I'll show you why. That chops it up into little pieces. Go back to selection, select those faces, move them in, select this face, move it in. Now we have a nice like little curved grip or trigger. It's very simple. We can scale this up also. I'm not sure if we're going to make it different yet. Scale it here. All right. I'm not quite sure yet if I'm going to make this grip move or not, but for now we're going to make it very simple. Now let's make this a little, because this doesn't make sense. This grip should slide back when the trigger's pressed, so it shouldn't go back absurdly far. So we'll put it right here. We'll tweak this a little bit. Just select the front part here, slide it, and there we go. There's our grip. Control S will save. Do that often. All right, now we're going to add a little more visual interest to the actual grip. And by doing that, we're going to add some kind of something for your fingers to kind of grab into. And the way I do that is I'm actually going to create a cube here, scale it up like so. And I'm going to use this to cut out a little chunk right here. And it'll make sense why in just a second. So let's rotate it. Maybe start kind of here, like so. Kind of get it in position. Add a couple loop cuts, like so. Go here and here. So why are we doing this? I'm going to select this object, select this here, Control minus, and cut it out. Then we'll add a new object, another cube. Actually, let's not add a cube. Let's add a plane. Hit Tab, scale it up, move it up, then mirror it along the Z-axis. Make sure clipping's enabled. And we'll worry about that. We'll finish that up in just a second. And we're going to add a little bit of this to... We're going to use this to actually add the little, like, loops to the hand. Like so. I think I can actually do an annotation of what I'm going to do visually here. It's black on black. Sorry if that's kind of annoying. There we go. Extrude and extrude. to about here. And I'm going to apply a subdivision to the whole entire thing. Add a loop, loop, and a loop. Move this backwards, move this backwards, move this backwards. So we're starting to get a little bit of a curve there. And it's kind of hard to see here. Let's add one thing to make it a little easier to see. Cavity. That helps a little bit. I like that shadow. That helps a lot too. Now let's extrude it down. Now we want to make sure that the clipping is on. Sorry, clipping is on. Delete those edges. There we go. Nice little grip. Double the subdivisions. Now we can really go in here and kind of tweak these a little bit, like so. Now notice how I can't see those. If you click on here, you'll actually be able to see them. Like that. Move it a little. All right, I'm gonna do one thing here. I'm gonna select this and add a crease to it so that it transitions kind of smoothly up here. I want the top to be smooth as well. Sorry with a lot of clicks here. Me kind of being quiet. That's the top. Crease it. That makes it nice and smooth up there. I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom. Select that. There. And there. It's kind of hard to see, I know. Crease it. Like that. Kind of arrange it there. Scale that. Scale that. There we go. So that makes the grip a little bit more interesting. Then we can go in here to our cut here and tweak it however we want. I can even make this cut. I can add a modifier to it and subdivide it. But I want to make sure that the subdivision is only applying to a certain direction. Click select. Oops. There we go. That's the difference. Forgot to do the bottom also. There we go. Nice and smooth transition. There, we got a nice cool little grip. Save it. All right, now let's add the top details up here. My blender actually crashed on me, which is kind of annoying. But it's not a big problem. All right, first of all, let's do this back piece. Add a cube. Move it up here. Scale it up. Scale it this way. Like so. We're going to add a cylinder. Move it up here. Scale it. Use that cylinder to cut out of that. So you have a nice little thing right there. I don't want this curve to go all the way in there, so I'm actually going to flatten out the bottom of the cylinder here. I'm actually going to flatten out the bottom of the cylinder. I'm going to select those edges and scale it along the z-axis. Like that. Until the scaling is at 0. Move it up here. And there we go. Scale it a little bit. So I think right about there should look good. And because I think this is supposed to be a sight, it needs to have a groove in the middle. And we can just do it in here. Add 2 loop cuts. Select these faces, export them up, and scale it back, or just slide it back in here. There we go. So if I want to scale these individually, if I do this, it'll scale them both to the middle position. What I really want to do is scale them individually, and I believe that is right here. Pivot point individual origins. Scale them like so. There we go. Save it. Now let's do the front part of the scope. Add another mesh. Move it up here. So it's a lot of repetition. It's a lot of very simple objects just kind of overlapping on top of each other. Sorry if this isn't super interesting. So Warhammer is an interesting universe. I was never into it for a long time. I didn't have wargaming as a kid. I didn't have anything like this. And so I've kind of gotten into it in my late 30s just because the universe is almost hilariously absurd. And I've become kind of fascinated by it recently. And while some of the cultural aspects of the game are a little odd, especially its kind of fascist reverence, which is a little... I'll be honest, a little off-putting. I still find the universe to be fascinating enough to want to make things from it. There we go. Check that out. And I'm not a big gun person, but those should roughly line up. It's a fake gun. Doesn't matter that much if they don't. But yeah, I found the Warhammer universe to be kind of fascinating. I love the designs, and some of the cosplayers I know who have made cosplay designs from it have done extraordinary work. And I kind of wanted to just, join in with that little universe for a while. So this is my first kind of foray into it. So there's also this little piece here. I think that, this would be part of a barrel in a normal gun. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but we'll make it a little curved surface. So rather than create a new one, we'll just grab this cylinder, Control D to duplicate it, scale it up, kind of plop it in there. Adds a little bit of visual interest to it. There we go. Scale that. Yeah, that's kind of cool. And we'll go through and make this look like it's more of a part. If it's like it's a separate piece later. When we go do another detail pass. Check it out. We're getting closer and closer to something. All right, let's move on to this piece finally. And actually move on to this piece. Let's add some of these highlights here, these edges, which are kind of cool. Let's make it maybe the best thing to do for that. Let's add this curve right here. See this little loop? Let's actually add that in there. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna add a mesh, a cylinder. 32 is pretty good. Scale it up to the appropriate size. Like so. And then plop it in there. We're going to do one thing. We're going to go to edit mode here. Select these bottom vertices. Delete them. Let's scale it up a little. Here. Let's mirror it along the z-axis. So, Apply clipping. All right, there's a reason for this madness. Trust me on it. Let's select this edge and this edge here. Hit F to fill them in. Select the top. F to fill it in. Apologize if the... Oh, my little thing isn't displaying. Let me fix that. I had a crash so the shortcuts went away. All right, so the reason why I did that is then I can have this be a little bit more precise. I can select this face now, extrude it, like so, then select this here, chop it out. Look at that nice little curve. Now let's add a little knob here. Add mesh, another cylinder. So many cylinders. Never-ending cylinders. So I'm guessing this is some kind of fire select mode. Right there. So you can have it pop out there a little bit if you want, or have it be a little lower. It's up to you. We'll have this just be flush with this for now. We'll make it into something a little more later. So yeah, there's a very basic little cylinder. And on the gun, there's another one here. We'll do Control D. Plop it over there. And we'll go through and add some more detail to those in just a bit. Or we can actually do it right now. Go into edit mode. And we're going to do a very fun thing. We're going to do, I think it's Alt. Wait, press it here. All right, so to get this to, it's Alt-E, extrude individual faces. That'll do that. And what we're, and you can then scale it out just a little bit like that. And now we want to scale the individual faces a little. And to do that, we're going to go back over here to individual origins, hit S, and there we go. We have this nice little thing here. Nice and simple. Two different fire select modes. And I think those are actually only going to be on one side or both, so we'll kind of leave them floating. Won't actually apply anything. All right, let's add this little groove. That's just going to be a simple cube. Like so. Just like that. Now, if we want the cube to apply to both sides, make sure its location is applied. Go over here to add modifier. We can then mirror it on the Z-axis, and it'll chop out on both sides. So any changes I make to it will apply to both at the same time. And there we go. Little cut. We can add some more visual interest to that later. It could also be a cut and an addition, like so. But we'll worry about that later. All right, so for the back here, I think this is going to be another cylinder. So rather than duplicate it, let's just let me just grab this here, scale it up. All right. How about that? So we're about, what, 30 minutes into this? Yeah, we're getting pretty... It's getting pretty decent. Let's make this a little bigger, longer here. All right, we got this little... I'm going to guess this is actually a fire select mode, since I don't think Warhammer guns have safeties. So we will add that. Add a cube. Scale it up. Move it up. We don't actually, doesn't matter because we're not going to mirror it. Go here, select that. Control negative. Add another mesh. Move this up here. Scale it up. There we go. Let's add some loops to it. How about that? We're going to go back and do that same thing with the edge select. Oh, this is hit C, it selects multiple things. Alt E, individual faces. Move them up. We want to scale them individually. I only want to scale them along this axis, like that. Now, we'll add a little more. We'll add a little more to that in a bit. All right, what's the next thing we should add? Maybe a. Let's do this right here. So there's like these little grooves in here, and they kind of follow along with the gun. So we'll actually do a little fun. We'll do a little fun thing here. We're going to create a plane. Scale it up a bit. And we are going to kind of duplicate those edges here. Sorry, edge select. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say 5. I'm sure there's some Warhammer lore about why there's exactly 5. Maybe it's just something that's in this picture. Bevel them to duplicate it. There we go. Now we can extrude, rotate. There's actually another way to do that. You can move the 3D cursor if you want and do a spin. Works pretty well. But let's just do it the old-fashioned way. Extrude down. Oh, we need to add a mirror on the Z-axis. There we go. Delete. That's kind of annoying. You can't really see it very well. I'm just going to hum annoyingly to myself while I do this for you guys. We're going to actually select the opposite sides, extrude them up a little bit. Now we select all of these. We can do it by that or like that. Then extrude, rotate it a little bit, extrude it, rotate it a little bit, just like that. If you want, you can then select here, rotate it a little bit. Move this here. We can also do another little loop cut there and move it. That should be pretty good for the basics. Now, it's pretty blocky right now. We can actually make it a little bit more, a little bit smoother if we want, pretty easily. smooth it out, we can actually use subdivisions. The first thing we want to do is we want to select all the edges that we want to have, still being a hard surface modeling. This is kind of a little tricky to do, but you want to just go through and select them all. Hit N, add a crease to it. I promise it'll make sense in a second. So much of 3D modeling is just little tiny clicks over and over again. Probably been easier to do this before I extruded it all, but that's okay. I don't know how often I've been 3D modeling something, and I spend the entire time trying to select one little thing on a line like that. All right. Now I'm going to apply a subdivision surface modifier like that. And notice how nice and smooth those curves get. We missed a few edges, and that's fine. Just add those creases now. Missed there. And there. Nice and simple. Look at that nice smooth curve. Almost looks professional, like it was built on a Forge World. All right, let's add this little base of the magazine. Add a mesh, a plane or a cube. Let's add a plane, actually. We're going to repeat the operation, scale it up, move it, mirror it, Z-axis, clipping, extrude, delete. As you probably can tell now, a lot of this 3D modeling we do is just going to be the same exact thing over and over again until your shapes kind of rough out. Just kind of keep doing the same thing. Again and again and again. There we go. Let's compress this slightly. Press this slightly. You know, the funny thing is that if I was actually making this for a cosplay, I'd probably just build it out of foam because it would be very simple to make out of foam and probably a lot lighter and easier to finish. But what fun is that? So to continue my ramble about 40K, I find the universe kind of fascinating. It's like an amalgam of everything mixed together. It's sort of space fantasy. You know, it coined the term grimdark. It's almost absurd how dark the universe is and gloomy. Everyone's miserable and just kind of delightful. Kind of a fan of the darker mythologies. People like, so what got me into kind of Game of Thrones early on was the darkness of the universe. So yeah, I can kind of do whatever I feel like doing for down here. It's kind of fun, simple. Let's add a little bevel to this. There we go. Ah, bevels. I've actually considered for a while doing an Inquisitor cosplay, like Eisenhorn or something like that. So this is kind of along those ideas. If I just did some kind of Inquisitor, Inquisitors tend to use bolt pistols. Like an actual large bolt gun would be a little too large for them, but bolt pistol's a good size for an Inquisitor. You know, Eisenhorn used smaller ones. So actually we're getting pretty close. This is actually kind of at a point where you could almost consider this kind of done. Everything else is just adding on more details. Nothing really major and pressing to add on right now. So we'll go on, we add this little piece here, and then we'll make another video of going through and just detailing all the individual parts a little bit more now that we've had all the basic shapes blocked out. I'm going to change one thing here. I don't want this have a knob on this side. I keep saying knob, and all I can think of is Carl Pilkington. So I'm going to get rid of the mirroring. And add a face there. There. Because I only want that to be on one side. I want it to have a little bit of asymmetry to it. This would be a great, I'm realizing now this would be a great left-handed gun, not so much a right-handed gun, because you'd have to kind of reach around the other side to adjust all your settings, but hey, why not? Lefties are people too. I'm gonna get a comment for that. All right, let's add this little doodad down here under the grip. My understanding, one of Eisenhorn's guns is very atypical in the Warhammer 40k universe, and that it actually has the magazine in the grip, like a Glock or something like that, as opposed to the magazine up front. It probably is one of those things where it just, some piece of art was done that way, and so I bet the writer just kind of wrote it into the book that way. I wonder how often that happens in writing, where it's just like, oh, the artist messed something up. Well, I'll make it that part. I'll make that part of the thing now. Now, what do I want this to look like? Let's curve it a little bit. Or the subdivision. This is the exciting part. Just dead air. Maybe you can hear the buses outside while I ramble incoherently about whatever I feel like talking about. There we are. Hey, look at that. It's a happy little grip. Just do a Bob Ross thing. It's a happy grip. It just wants to be there. It's inviting. It's friendly. Do like a little, just some weird shape. Yeah, that looks all right. Might add like a skull to it later. All right, there we go. Hey, look, a bolter. It's quote done. I'll go back and add some detail in a minute.